This podcast was created as a part of Podcast Lab by India Film Project in association with Anchor by Spotify.
Strangely, during my nascent years, I never read as a kid. I didn't particularly enjoy it. It almost felt like a punishment to sit in a corner and then concentrate and read. But I think when I was 8 or 9, and my mom was really afraid that reading would never stick with me, and she felt that reading was essential to, your overall development and creativity, etc. That's when she took me to my uncle and she said, "You gotta make this girl read." And I'll never forget that evening because it was, life changing in many ways. He brought out an old dated copy from his time as a kid of The Magic Faraway Tree, and he sat me down. He sat tiny 8-year-old me down, and I was really tiny for an 8-year-old, and he started reading from the book. He has a really he has an incredible voice and throw, and he started telling me about all these really crazy characters, Moonface and Silky, and the lands that you encounter when you climb up the magic faraway tree. And I was just staring at him with big eyes. I was just staring back at him, and he then gave me this copy and he said, "I promise you're going to enter a whole other world that's going to change you forever, and you won't be able to keep this book down." And true to his words, I finished that book so quickly, and then there was no stopping. And then I just jumped into the bandwagon of just reading, and I kept reading like more of like the famous five, Secret Seven, The Magic Faraway Tree, The Six Cousins, Mallory Towers. And every week I would recreate one of the stories, and I would, enact it with a bunch of my cousins. And I don't know, I feel like I said, I attribute a lot of my creativity to the number of books I consumed while I was growing up, because every birthday I would get all the cash that I would get on my birthdays. I would go to Landmark and splurge on books. I would be in Ellure Lending Library every week, returning and borrowing more books. And I really feel that was very formative to the way I think even now. Very formative to the way I think, and really shaped the way I view the world, the way I write even, and the way I articulate, the way I come up with concepts even on a very architectural sense. It's all intrinsically linked to my years of reading as a kid.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Closet Writer Chronicles. I'm your host Sangeeta, aka the Moody Marshmallow. You just heard our guest for today, Ashna Lulla. Ashna is an architect and interior designer who grew up in Chennai. She has an eye for detail, and her aesthetics are driven by traditional yet modern designs. She has worked at reputed practices across India while being an aspiring writer, and she is now foraying into architectural journalism. She is currently preparing to come out with her debut book, With Love, Madras. Join me as I chat with her about her journey from architecture to writing and get to know her a little better. So hi Ashna, welcome to the Closet Writer Chronicles. It's so good to have you here.
Hi, Sangeeta. I'm really honored that you chose me to be part of this.
No, not at all. I'm so happy to have you, and I'm excited for our discussion today. So kind of, diving right in, how did you get into writing? And, when did you realize that this was something you wanted to professionally pursue, considering you're actually an architect and you're into design as well? So how did that happen?
So my path to writing has not been a linear one. For everyone who does not know me, I am an architect, and it's what I've studied and practiced ever since I graduated. In architecture is typically a 5-year program, and the fourth year is a year-long internship. So when I went off to Bangalore for my internship, I'd gotten to a really established practice, and there were 10 interns at the in the office at the time. And I realized how far behind I was in terms of like just like knowing things about the design world, knowing things about architecture. Like my peers were very invested in educating themselves on a daily basis. And Bangalore itself as a city is very design centric, so there are always like tons of talks, workshops, and like these presentations where different architects come and present their projects and explain the entire thought process behind it.
Right.
So it used to happen like every Friday, and I was super interested in it. And I realized that I really needed to like buck up and catch up, and that's when I started consuming design publications on a very disciplined level. Like I would come to office half an hour earlier, and I would just consume different kind of like different kind of design news. It was not only architecture, it was just like a graphic design, product, textile, any kind of design news. And I did that for a year, and I really enjoyed it. And I think that's when I realized that I mean, I didn't even realize it back then, but I realized that I really enjoyed consuming design news, and I really enjoyed like writing. Like I would like take notes and like take notes of all my learnings. I would listen to podcasts and stuff like that, and I realized that that was my niche, and that's what I really always like wanted to know about. So like it's only in the last 1 year that I realized that this is something that I actually enjoy doing, because I spend so much time doing it, like researching and then writing. And which is so it's been a very recent discovery that I want to write for design publications.
Okay.
And I'm trying to just build a portfolio to get that first byline out.
No, but that's amazing, that you kind of found that, oh, like this is something I could do, and kind of integrating what you're already like professionally doing, which is architecture into that, architecture and design. But then, having said that, I always think there's always these certain pieces that I think that stay with you, especially I think in writing. I feel like with most writers, this happens. There's this one piece of writing you see, and you're like, oh my God, this is written so beautifully. This is written so well. I wish I could write like this, or, maybe I can attempt doing something like this. So, what are some stories or pieces of writing that have, really stayed with you? I mean, it can be books, can be articles, can even be movies or podcasts. And are there any writers that really inspire you?
So I think actually it's a very interesting question, because I feel that I embarked on a creative path. Like architecture is very creative, even though it is technical, because of the kind of books I consumed as a child. I feel like
Right.
like since we studied like in Lady Andal together, like our childhoods and like just what we were exposed to and the way we learned and did things was very different from the kind of schools, the other the education that other kids got at the time. There was a lot of emphasis on extracurricular activities, on
Right.
our plays and everything, right? And also just the kind of fiction that I consumed as a child. I feel like that really was formative to shaping how I creatively think now. So one of the books that like again, this is not design related, but one of the books that have really stayed with me through the years is this book called Anne of the Green Gables.
Oh,
I'm not
yeah.
sure if you've read it. I really loved reading it when I was like 12 or 13,
Mm.
because the language is great. It paints such a beautiful it paints such a beautiful like description of the kind of like the kind of place Anne grows up in. It also speaks of very like nuanced emotions, and it's a child, it's a book for children. And
Right.
it spoke about like feminism, like she was like a feminist, and it spoke about all these things you know, for a book that was written, when it was written, it was very, very ahead of its time.
Right.
And I've always found myself going back to that book at different junctures in life. Sometimes it's just because it's very comforting to, go back to that. It reminds me of my childhood and stuff like that. But if
Hmm.
you have to ask me in the recent, what are the stories or pieces of writing that have stayed with me? So I really, really, really like this particular podcast called Design Matters by Debbie Millman.
Okay.
She actually is a professor at SVA in New York, School of Visual Arts in New York.
Okay.
And she actually, so Design Matters is the first podcast on design in the world.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so she's like, I don't even have a count of the number of episodes that she's recorded. And basically why I really like it is because she finds the most interesting people. Like,
Hmm.
they're a combination of different creative careers. They would be like an author and an illustrator, or like a musician and something else, like very seemingly contrasting creative professions. But then it just makes you realize that creativity is so intertwined. And what
Right.
I really love about her podcast is that she researches the hell out of her guests. She's read
Hmm.
like every article, every book. She spends a lot of time even deciding who she's going to get onto the show. And it's more than just it's not a superficial day off or what they do, but it
Right.
really breaks down their journey on how, sometimes you, when you look up at someone and you see, you want to emulate their path. You want to know how they did what they did. And because a lot of our problems, and it actually is very similar, right? Your
Right.
context may be different, but so it's really comforting when you know that, okay, this led to that and that led to this. And it just reassures in your own, or affirms in your own head, that everything will eventually connect. And I really like the way she really like delves into each profession and each person. And I think, yeah, I mean, if it's the first podcast on design, then I mean, she's been doing it for so long, she's obviously pro at it. So I mean, there's never been an episode that I've been disappointed with. Like, I'm always like excited to like, and there's so many episodes, so I always have something cool to pick. So I definitely really, really like the work that she puts up. Another really cool book that I've read, not at one shot, but like, in like pieces, is this book called 74 Short Essays on Design.
Okay.
Again, very, very cool, because it speaks about so many aspects of design with a very storytelling lens. Like, it's not even boring for someone who is not in the design world. It's written by this person called Michael Beirut, who
Okay.
actually runs who's actually the founder of this organization called Pentagram, a very
Okay.
huge yeah, Pentagram has done like the communication for Hillary Clinton. They've done
Right.
like, they have all the biggest, like, like clients in, like politics, design, and healthcare and everything. And they're one of the, like, again, one of the oldest and most prestigious design agencies in the world. So Michael Beirut is actually the spokesperson for graphic design, and he's written like many cool books, but 74 short essays on design would probably be my favorite. It always stayed with me because, again, right, like, you have to have gone through so many different experiences, and
Right.
to kind of like, at that point write and make it so engaging for someone who's just starting out. So I think, yeah, if I had to really talk about books and articles, I mean, I wanted to talk about one from my past, and then two from, what's
Yeah.
inspired me in the recent. So I guess it would be these.
Wow. No, that's amazing. Definitely checking out that podcast. It sounds really interesting. And yeah, I have not read Anne of Green Gables, but I did watch some of the episodes on Netflix because it's been adapted into a series.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
with an E, I think that's what it's called. So yeah, it's
yep.
interesting. Yeah. So I think it's a really sweet show, which I still have to finish. But yeah, definitely check out that podcast for sure. But kind of coming back to architecture and design, so like how we spoke about, content that's inspired you, while growing up, and I guess when you were making that decision to study architecture and, kind of even go into design, were there ever any projects or architectural masterpieces that you thought that, oh my God, I absolutely love the way this is built or this is designed? And similarly, are there any, designers or architects that you look up to?
Yeah, actually, so my dad was working on building Park Hyatt in Chennai, and they were building like this really cool restaurant called the Flying Elephant.
Okay.
Park Hyatt's built a couple years ago, so at the time, Flying Elephant was. I mean, I think even now it's a very like novel concept, the way it's been executed, and all of that. And the designer who was working on the project was a man named George Wong. My dad was actually we were actually taking a trip to the US, and for some reason, I think I was in the ninth or 10th grade then, and for some
Okay.
reason I didn't want to go shopping, and I chose to go into one of these meetings with my dad. And I I mean, that memory is etched in my head forever, because it kind of made me want to pursue this path. So basically, like, his studio was, I took like these like these old Parsi lifts. Like, I got into
Hmm.
one of them, and it's so strange that you would think that New York is like, you wouldn't have these kind of things, but super old school. And I actually, you had to actually rotate like a lever to go up to his level.
Oh,
And
wow.
when I reached his level, it was like this tiny little studio. Not tiny for New York standards, but tiny little studio. And there was a TT table that had been
Okay.
fashioned into his conference table.
Oh,
And
wow.
there were like sketches and like renders and like material swatches and all of that surrounding us. And I was just like, wow, I would like love to walk into a space like this every single day of my life.
Hmm.
His energy was great. He had like he had projected like the presentation on the screen, and he was talking about how every cuisine had like a different level. And he really delved into like the minutest of details, like he had thought about things like what the waiters would wear, what was the kind of cutlery, how the furniture was going to be shaped, what it would make you feel, how the
Right.
vibe of each zone would be different. And I found that so fascinating, because I mean, that was just like a concept presentation, and I was starstruck. And that, I think, was my first introduction to architecture and design. And I think I just came back, and I think in 11th or 12th, therefore I mean, I find it really ridiculous even saying this out loud, but because I came school first and 10th, I told my parents that, oh, all the smart kids take science, so I will also take science. Never asked myself whether I really was cut out to do science. And then I was just like, yeah, that afternoon kept coming back to me, and I was like, yeah, it makes sense, science and architecture. So that's how I mean, that's what really got me to getting into this. And in terms of like architects that I look up to, so actually I've realized I realized that even when I was working in college, and especially when I went into my job, my boss even
Right.
told me that I was more drawn to interior design and graphic design, like a happy
Okay.
medium between the two. So I've even like the kind of work that I look up to and the kind of people that I follow, like even Debbie Millman, for instance, the podcast, right? Like, she's actually a brand strategist. She's
Okay.
not an architect, but that's the kind of content I consume. So for me, like, I discovered this really cool company when I was working in Bangalore. Like, my boss told me about them. They call Avroco,
Okay.
and they're based in New York, and they predominantly do hospitality projects. So why I really like them is that because all the four founders, they have equal shares, and they
Okay.
share like their creative duties, and they don't really have like defined roles in the company. And so basically, how they came together was that four of them. So two of them were architects and two of them were graphic designers, and they were all studying, I think, at Carnegie Mellon.
Okay.
And what happened is that, like this happened like completely like in isolation. So the two architects, when they got a project, they would each work on their respective projects and then switch between them, and
Okay.
then like work on the others and then switch back. So the final product was always a culmination of two people's thought and not one. So,
Hmm.
and the same, and parallelly at the same time, these two graphic designers were also doing something like that. And the four of them actually met in their late 20s because
Okay.
they had a project that required interiors and graphics to be done. And they worked together and it was magic. And then they were like, I think that this is what we should do. Like, this is like, we should like offer everything from like designing a space to designing the menu to designing what the waiters wear to designing what cutlery comes to designing like what's like back then no social media, so what the advertisements would look like, what the
Right.
promotions would look like. And that's really how their company came into being. And I really find them cool because like just the way they operate, right? Like
Right.
their every detail is so thoughtful. And what they a very cool thing that they said is that you know like every time like the best design comes when it's so layered and so many things have been thought about that every time you go into the space you discover something new.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really like them for that. And also I really like them is because they also have this really cool thing called magic cards where they each of them write their visions or what they want to achieve, and then basically their mission is to help like basically the four of them have to help each other get through their to-do list of what they want to do. And I think that's the energy that they've kept going. And they keep every 3 months like they go off somewhere and they revisit these lists and their vision. And they've kind of like they're like the pioneers of like hospitality. And in fact like their design is so good that now they even own a couple of like brands, and they've started this whole thing called hospitable thinking and all of that. So
That's amazing.
yeah, I find it really really cool because they've published like art books, they've like redesigned like tiny apartments and flipped them, they've like created really cool like vintage uniforms, they've opened a brand consultancy because all these individual things were on their different lists, and they've like
Right.
made it happen. So yeah, so I think yeah, I would talk, I mean definitely there's some like they're a company that I would aspire to work for.
Yeah, no, they sound like a really cool organization because I know for me, like, I mean, I'm no architect, but I think my first ever experience even appreciating architecture was actually even just like because I'm Malayali. So whenever I go to Kerala, like I end up visiting like a lot of relatives and some of them still live in these really old ancestral Kerala houses. So for me, like I think that was the first time I would be in awe because obviously in the city you don't see architecture like that. So I think for me it was that the temples, and I think the first time I was really I think blown away by like a functional modern piece of architecture was I think I was traveling on work. This is when I was still in shipping and logistics, and I went to Antwerp for like a shipping conference kind of thing, and I visited the Antwerp port house, which was designed by Zaha Hadid. And I was blown away by the way it looked on the outside because it looked like art from the outside. And then I remember walking in and it was still beautiful, but I was so amazed at how functional it was in spite of how it looked. Because I was like, this is not what you expect when you walk in. And I thought for an office space, that was just amazing. So yeah, I mean, so I'm wanting to actually, grow up and become an architect or get into design. I can only imagine how awed you must have been, by everything that was like happening around you. And yeah, the Flying Elephant is an amazing restaurant. It's beautifully designed. I love going there. Anyone in Chennai who's not been there, please visit if you can. But yeah, that's amazing. But coming to the whole architecture thing, I wonder because I feel like most professions have this creative professions mostly. But then I wondered, are there any misconceptions people have about, architects or architecture? And what's the biggest one you see?
Okay, there are plenty, and I know so far I've painted like this, beautiful picture of how it's been for me and all of that. So I think like I said, I wasn't very informed, right? It was just that one afternoon that I had, and I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna do architecture. So I think that to succeed in architecture itself, you need like equal parts of your left and right brain, because as much as it is creative, it is super, super technical. And it's very important that you enjoy it, because it's very hard, very grueling, a lot of long hours, and very low reward. Like, a lot of people don't even like respect the profession, because they just feel like if they hire like carpenters or like civil engineers and they just show them an image of Pinterest, they're gonna get they're gonna get what they want. And they just, people just have like, a lot of people have this not a misconception, but a lot of people believe that the role of an architect is really like, it's not that required, right? It's a very
Right.
only if like you're super rich, then you can afford an architect and all of that. So I think that, and I think I just feel like a lot of people from the outside think that it's very glamorous, and like, just like how I did, right? Like, surrounded in the, I'm in this cool room doing all these things, but like, you really don't understand like the intricacies of like, actually like, you know I mean, most of your day is really you fleshing out option after option on either a 3D modeling software or CAD. Like, the presentation bit is just the fun bit that comes, once, like after like months of like working like that. So, even
Right.
your typical day to day is like, it, I mean, it's not very and yeah, I just think that you really need to love it to
Right.
be in it, because like you make, it's one of the lowest paid professions. So
Hmm.
you really need to have like a very strong why to, like, tell yourself why you're doing this for so long. And basically you see the reward very late. So I think
Right.
that's one of the things. And I also think that at least colleges in India, at least again, the college I studied at, it really doesn't paint an accurate picture of what your work life is. The internship was a good lens into that. And
Okay.
I really think what they've done now, which I think is really cool, is that they've given you an option at year 3 to exit.
Okay.
Yeah, which I think is really great, and I wish they had given everybody, when we were studying, because 5 years is a long time to invest when you don't
Right.
even get like a real picture of what it's going to be like for you once you graduate.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, wow. Even I wasn't. Yeah, that's true. Architecture does seem like a fairly glamorous job. At least the ones who do really well, it seems really glamorous for
Yeah.
them. But yeah, of course, you never see the kind of work that goes behind it for sure. But yeah, it's kind of, I guess, moving to a more light, well, not lighter, but a more special topic. So you started working on a book in the past during the pandemic. If I'm right about that, you can correct me. Um, it's called Homes of Madras. How did that happen, and what has that journey been like?
Okay, so it was called Homes of Madras, but now it's called With Love Madras.
Okay,
Yeah, so it was actually during the pandemic, like I was working on a shoot with another friend, Vignesh, who is also, I mean, who is like my co-author on With Love Madras. And I was styling this space and he was photographing this space, and we did not know who the clients were. We basically didn't know anything about them. And but at the end of the day, like, they like heavily engaged with us, and we were like asking them questions. And we understood their story at the end of the day, and how the space came into being, because they kind of like put the entire space together and stuff like that. And I found that really, really interesting, because I thought that there are so many homes in the city that probably have really cool stories, but they haven't been published, or
right,
no one really knows about them, for two reasons. China is not very represented in the design industry itself,
right,
because people think that it's a very traditional aesthetic, and not like, and people just don't think that like Chennai or Madras as a city is very design focused, which is completely untrue. And the second thing is that I think people over here are also a little more conservative, and no one really wants to flaunt, like, the beautiful homes that they have, and
Right.
all of that. So I just thought that would be really cool if we discovered homes in the city and we wrote about them. And I just voiced it out to Vignesh, and he was like, and we thought that it would be a really cool way for us to build a portfolio. Like, when you have a project and
Right.
it has like a timeline, and like, you're also accountable to someone else. Like, I wanted to get really good at writing, because I thought that if not now, then when? So I
Right.
was just like, at least I should give myself a shot and see if enjoy doing it. And this seemed like a low risk but really fun way of getting better at what we each wanted to get better at. So
Right.
so the project really started like that, but it grew to be something that we, larger than what we imagined, because of the way we approached it. Like, I didn't want it to be like a random DIY effort. I wanted,
Hmm.
we really like recceed homes. We had like a list of 100 homes, and then we like narrowed it down. We conducted surveys. We tried to understand what people are looking for. Even
Right.
the way we discovered homes, right? Like, it was a lot through other people, through journalists, through articles, sometimes just about reading about like really cool people and things that they're doing, and then hoping that they have very cool homes. And
Right.
so, and in the process of like getting better at our skills, we all, each of us like seeked a mentor to help us. So we got, so that we understood that this is what it takes to really put out a project that's good. So I think what's been really like fascinating about the journey is discovering Madras from the lens of so many different people, and
Right.
all the kind people that we've met over the internet. And so,
Hmm.
to date, some of them we haven't even met in person, but the help that they extended because they believed in the project and they believed in our efforts has been so heartwarming. Because I never really thought that I would get to speak to, like, the editor of Elle Decor, or or the global editorial director of Condé Nast, or like,
Right.
a cool writer in the US, or like one of the coolest architectural photographers. And the project has made those people accessible to us, and that in itself is so rewarding. So I think and the best part is that we didn't really put pressure on ourselves. We let the journey take us to where we are at right now.
Right. No, that's amazing. And I've been fortunate enough to see glimpses of this book, and it's lovely. It's very well. It's very thoughtfully put together, I think, and it really kind of makes the effort of representing the essence of what Madras or Chennai is. And I'm really excited for people to read it once it's out. I'm excited to get a copy myself once it comes out. So yeah, I think, both of us have been in Chennai for so long. We've studied here, we've done our schooling here and whatnot, and we've also worked a good amount of time in the city. And I know you'll be shifting cities soon. Um, but that kind of again sort of begs the question, you've worked on this project and you're moving cities and whatnot. What does home mean to you?
It's so weird because I've been designing homes all my life. When I was, when working at which all the firms that I've worked at, but I feel like I discovered what home really meant to me only through this book. And
Okay.
I'm gonna quote, one of the homeowners who basically, one of my, I don't want to say my favorite, but one of the houses that really, have my heart. It's called La Casa Roja, and it's going to be the last story in our book. And
Okay.
basically, the owner Ranjit said that homes should feel familiar, snug, and warm, like old worn socks.
Hmm.
What he basically meant by that is that even if you're getting it designed by an architect, even if it's a brand new house, when you step in, it should feel very familiar to
Right.
you as a person, because that's the space that you inhabit. And that has stayed with me, and has been like, I'm designing like a couple of like a small homes for people. And that has been like my guiding factor when I'm designing each of their homes, because a lot of the times architects want to design what's trending or what they would like to stay in, or a lot of that. And that's very common. Like I have
Right.
done that too, right? Like you want your vision in that space, but it's about a careful negotiation of what is really like beautiful, but
Right.
also what resonates with the people who are going to be living in that space.
Right.
And I think that the best homes, like again, this is something that's very common when you see magazines and stuff like that. There'll be like these pristine images with these gorgeous artifacts, and all of that like beautifully shot, and
Right.
those images get published, right?
Hmm.
But all the homes, I'm not even kidding, every single home that I visited during the book, Vignesh
Right.
and I made it like we were very adamant that we did not want to like Photoshop anything out. We did not want to style it. Like I didn't
Right.
want to rearrange anything. I wanted it to be, I wanted to capture it just the way I was seeing it. And the best homes, talk about the journeys you've taken as a human being. So
Right.
like even all the objects, like it was so interesting to see, to hear the homeowners talk about like, oh, we got this particular light from like this antique shop that was 50 kilometers away from London on a rainy, like a cold afternoon. It's it's all these little things that have come together from different pockets of their life,
Hmm.
and then they're infused into the space that has so much more meaning than filling the home with pretty looking objects that have no personal connection to you.
Yeah.
And that's the same with like furniture, with objects, with even the way a space is like layered. Like I just loved that Madras as a city and the homes that we've covered had so much thought into how all of this was put together. And I think that this can only happen when you have when you are so deeply invested in making that home like a mirror of who you are or who you're evolving as a person. And I feel like the home also should evolve with you. Like it's always nice to like move these things around, rearrange it. I mean, there's so much joy in doing that. So I think that that's what home means to me. So even now, like I'm very conscious, like, if I travel, we haven't, none of
Right.
us have really traveled, but, I really want to like, pick up something that's meaningful. And someone like, again, he told me that, don't worry about, oh, I have this wall, empty wall in my house, and I have to find a painting for that wall. He was like, just buy whatever speaks to you, whatever brings you joy. And he was like, you will find somewhere in that house where it will fit in. And I think
Hmm.
all the houses have been that for me. So I think that really is, from a very like design standpoint, like the home should feel all these things. And uh, yeah, I think you should just be really authentic with how you want
Yeah.
to like portray your home, or like
Yeah.
because only spaces that are like very authentic to you are that's what makes you feel very like like you feel yourself in those kind of spaces.
True. True.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's very well put, and I think that's a beautiful way of kind of describing it. It was so funny when you were actually mentioning about owners talking about where they've gotten like certain pieces of furniture or antiques or whatnot. I actually kind of recalled this story which my grandfather told me. So, like my mother was born and brought up in Bombay, so like their family was in Bombay. Like this is like the 70s and 80s, and my grandfather was someone who loved kind of doing up his home, and they had like an apartment at the time. And he would travel extensively for work, so he would keep going and getting these like antique pieces or something or the other for the house. And I believe he got like a chandelier from somewhere, like this antique chandelier thing. I'm not sure from where. From one of his travels he ended up getting it, and he put it, and it got stolen. And it was so funny because he found the exact same chandelier, and it was possibly the same one in Chor Bazaar in Bombay.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
which is it translates to the thieves market. So, and he bought it back because he's like, I think this is mine, but it looks like mine, but I'm just going to buy it back because I can't really do anything else. So when you said that, I was literally thinking of that story. So yeah, I mean, but no, I loved what you had to say about home. And yeah, now we're kind of coming to the end of this interview, and we always end on these last two questions. So the first one is, what are your aspirations? What are you looking forward to in the near or even distant future? Can be professional, personal, or anything really.
So I think what I am trying to consciously do, because I haven't done this all my life, is to try and be honest to myself about what I really want to do. And even now, I don't fully know what that is, but I do know that one of my goals was to, start writing for design publications. I don't know if that can become a full-time gig, but I want to just start, I just want to take that first step towards that. So that would mean, like, finishing the book, getting it published, and seeing where that takes me to. And I want to be completely, I feel like all my life I've lived according to this plan that I've set for myself, and
Right.
that really didn't bring me joy. And it was like I had a breakdown when I was 26, when I moved back home. And that's when I realized that, all this while I've just been trying to do what seemed good to everyone around me, in the sense, like,
Mm,
not because anyone was forcing me to do those things, but because I was perceived a certain way. And
mm,
everyone thought I was doing something cool, but internally I was very, very miserable. So
mm,
I think for me, like, it took almost like like a year of therapy and so much to, like, finally understand that, it's okay not to know, it's
mm,
okay to start from scratch. But
mm.
this time around, I just want to get it right. I just want to. So I think, for starters, I'm definitely the next role, like, I definitely want to pivot into design writing. And
Yeah,
at least, like, even if my day-to-day job does not have that on an entire, like, I at least want some component of it to have it. And I'm keeping myself so,
definitely.
like, very open, because I don't want to get anxious, because I'm moving to Toronto, and I really don't know what it's going to be like for me, because I've never lived
Mm,
out of India. So I'm totally okay, like, studying. I'm totally okay, like, working if I get something that I really like. I'm basically totally okay starting from scratch, because this time I really hope that I'm, on the right ladder
yeah.
towards where I want to go. So yeah.
No, that's amazing. And yeah, I mean, I think, I think one silver lining is you had, I guess, that realization at a fairly early stage in your life, because I know people say that, oh, like your 20s, you need to hustle and this, that, and be settled and whatnot. But I think the fact that you kind of realized even at, like, say 26, that, oh, I'm not happy with what I'm doing, and you took that decision, because a lot of people do end up kind of doing things they're not happy with and don't realize much later. So I think that's definitely a silver lining. And I'm really excited to see, what you do for the book and even just other things you're going to do, because I know it'll be amazing. It'll be incredible. Also, yes, just going to give a quick shout out to Ashwin Chabria, who is one of our guests on the in previous episodes on this show. As you know, he and Ashna are husband and wife. So yeah, you can go check out his episode too, because he gave a lot of shout outs to Ashna in that episode. Ashna has not given even one shout out on
I
this
was,
episode
I
too.
was, I was going to say that. I really don't know what my life would have been minus him, because he came at that point where it's very weird, but therapy made me realize this, that all my life up until I was 26, actually even now,
Hmm.
my entire, like, I kind of, like, hinged my entire self-worth on what I did professionally or academically. I thought very
Right.
little of myself minus that, right? So even
Hmm.
in school, like, I really I mean, I don't think I studied for the joy of it. I studied more because my parents were like, oh my God, this is so amazing. You're like a star child. Simran, you suck. You should be more like
Poor Simran.
Ashna. Yeah. So, and I thrived on that. Okay. And,
Hmm.
like I said, right, like even 11th and 12th, I chose science because, hey, all the smart kids choose science. Dumb decision. But, anyways, and architecture, again, like so many people in architecture school who were studying with me, they pivoted, okay, because
Right.
they were smart enough to realize, or they were brave enough, actually not smart enough, they were brave enough to know that there was something else that was made for them and they could use this as a foundation to pivot. But for
Hmm.
me, I was just like, oh, I have spent 5 years doing architecture, so now what do architects do after they graduate? They get into the best possible organization, and that's exactly what I did. I got into one of the top offices, and I worked there for 3 years. And while I learned a lot, I was so miserable. And then when I quit, because I had like a breaking point, I came back at 26 and I didn't even know what I liked,
Right.
so I just feel like Ashwin, kind of like and I was so scared because I was like, oh, I wasn't even able to meet people. I think an
Right.
entire year went by where I didn't want to meet anyone because I didn't have anything to talk about
Hmm.
professionally, and I was just like, I'm useless and I'm redundant without that. And Ashwin kind of like, told me that, hey, when we have another 30 years of our career ahead of you, it's okay to take time. Some people discover it early on. Let's just let's just stay honest. Let's just, keep listening to that voice. So I
Right.
feel like even this book, like, trust me, the if Ashna minus Ashwin would have never taken that risk. I was so risk averse. I would have
Oh.
never done something like this. So it's largely because, he was just like, no, it's totally okay. Go for it, go for it, go for it, go for
Hmm.
it. And I feel like I was lucky enough to have that voice, because I feel like without him, I would have just, gotten another job and, continued on this route, and told myself, hey, finally at 40, I'll be like the successful architect, even if I liked it or disliked it.
No, that's beautifully put, and more power to you and Ashwin. But I don't. I mean, of course, I mean Ashwin's amazing. I know him as well, and of course, both of you give each other that amazing sense of support. But I think you would have, even on your own, you would have eventually found your path, Ashna. And I think Ashwin also knows that, and I'm sure he's just extremely happy to be by your side and help you find that in a way. Um, but no, yeah, both of you are lovely, and more power and happiness to the both of you. Both of you are doing very well. So yeah,
Thank you,
coming
Sangeeta.
so coming to our last question, what is a piece of advice or learning you'd like to share with people? Again, can be creative, professional, or something you've just generally learned in life. I know you've already kind of sprinkled that throughout this
Yeah.
episode, but if there's anything specific you'd like to share.
Uh, I really think that, I mean, for me, like, really the biggest learning is to be kind to yourself,
Right,
and to give yourself that space to, be happy. And I
right,
feel like you can only personally be happy if you're professionally happy. Like, I mean, you don't have to have like 100 on 100 on both spheres, right? But like, since we spend most of our day doing, like, doing like, see, like a lot of people, right, like they can do jobs and they can view it with the lens of like, this is just a means to an end. For
right,
people like me, I like, because I derive so much of who I am from what I do,
right.
that kind of doesn't work with me, right? So I think that, I mean, I don't know, like, I think that, yeah, I think it's okay to like start over, and it's okay to have these honest conversations and check in with yourself, and it's okay to feel scared, because I've been feeling scared for the last 1.5 years, but like, I feel like at least we're making a start to, trying to find that happiness. We
Definitely.
mean, I mean, you may never know what your calling is. I don't know if I will find it out in the next few months, or like, but at least, like, you're taking small steps towards getting to that.
Right.
point.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I
No.
think that.
No, that's it's very well put, and I think a lot of people need to hear this because I think a lot of people are kind of still, doing things that may not feel authentic to them, and for whatever reasons, sometimes some people can't even leave it because either they're the breadwinners, they have financial constraints, or other life happens. So yeah, I mean, if you're fortunate enough to find what it is you truly enjoy doing and what fulfills you and find your purpose, as they say, then you're extremely fortunate. And if you just need that little nudge to go, find it, I hope this serves as that nudge for you. But yeah.
Actually, I'd like to add that, Sangeeta, you've been very inspiring to me because I remember when I came back, I actually met you for coffee at Sandy's, and I was maybe at that point you didn't know how distraught I was on the inside, but you told me that, hey, like I was doing this and I was working in shipping and logistics. I didn't
Yeah.
like it. I feel like law is my thing, and then you went for it, and just with everything that you've done with writing, like this podcast, your published work, and your poetry and your page, and just being so consistent is so inspiring, because I'm sure even you may not have seen that many monetary returns, but you're keeping at it because it gives you joy. And I seek, I am always inspired more by people I know personally, and what they're doing with their lives. And I definitely do have to say, while Ashwin I speak to on a like everyday basis, so he has like helped me. I definitely do know that I took a lot of inspiration from your journey, and even Popo's, if she's going to listen to this episode, because she also has done some, has taken some really courageous decisions that has made me feel like, okay, it's okay even if I fall, like at least I had the courage to take that decision.
Oh, thank you so much. That's very kind of you. That's very nice of you. I mean, we're all finding our ways, and yeah, Popo is one of again our mutual friends. If who knows, maybe we'll get her on an episode later. Who knows? But yeah, on that really positive and wonderful note, we've now come to the end of this interview. Thank you so much for being here, Ashna. I absolutely love talking to you, and I'm so excited for With Love Madras to come out.
Thank you so much, Sangeeta. I hope I didn't speak excessively.
Oh, don't worry. I'll fix it in the edit. Again, listeners, you know the drill. If you can figure the edits, please let me know. If you can't, that just means I'm improving. But no, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So that was my conversation with Ashna Lulla. I loved getting to know more about her journey from architecture to writing, and I'm so excited to read her upcoming book, With Love Madras. Closing this episode with an excerpt from With Love Madras, written and narrated by Ashna. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I'll see you next week with a new guest and a new chronicle to share. Talk soon!
I'm going to be reading out a few paragraphs from an essay titled The Maximalist of Madras. It's one of the essays that are being featured in our book With Love Madras. The reason I picked this particular essay was, one, you'd never imagine seeing a home like this in Madras, and two, Sangeeta pointed me towards this home. That is a very interesting story that I'm sure she will share. So here goes. When Ashwin Subramaniam opens the door to the cabinet of curiosities that is his Madras home, Riverside, the only valid response is a jaw drop. The exact jaw-dropping moment occurred as I was doom scrolling on Instagram just a week prior and came upon the home that was an exaggerated play on color, texture, and patterns. Even through the screen on my phone, I could see ombre-colored goblets peeking from behind an oversized vase of flaming pink bougainvillea, and a royal rosewood cradle fashioned into a coffee table filled with books and Balinese baskets. When Iris Apfel said, "More is more and less is a bore," she must have been looking at a similar scene. I was convinced I had to see it for myself. I contacted Ashwin, the homeowner, and here I am standing face to face with a 6-foot Garuda statue, the vehicle of Lord Vishnu. Once painted in saturated colors, reds, blues, and greens, reminiscent of temples, Ashwin acid washed the piece, giving it an age patina. The mythical bird sits amidst a cluster of sofas with kaleidoscopic cushions and paisley shawls sourced from the souks and bazaars of Central Asia. I look around closely, eager at what else could lie in store here. Ashwin was born in the 70s when Chennai was still Madras, evocative of a different era. The streetscape was a combination of coconut groves, temples, and street cricket. This formed the backdrop of his childhood at Riverside.